Hello and welcome to this new video about startups and software development and everything technology. It's a brand new video. In the last video, we talked about the unique distribution of roles in startups, and I was really excited about that. We talked about choosing co-founders. We talked about equity distribution. We talked about why startups. This topic is recursive thinking, thinking about communication bugs before execution. So let's get into the first part of this. Now, we're talking about the cost of unhandled exceptions. I'll use my personal experience to talk about the cost of unhandled exceptions. So recently, I was working on a project with a group of friends, and we didn't start initially because we onboarded I onboarded the rest of the team, but we didn't start immediately because of school activities. And then we are kind of like on a break now, and it's time to like work. So distributed tasks. Let's all get to it. It just seems like okay. I wasn't in the same mental space as they were because I ended up having to seem in certain ways try to motivate people and motivate them to, I think, be really committed to the project. So I feel like I reach out and I'm like, okay, can we talk about why there's so much delay in your execution? And then I don't even get a response sometimes. You understand? It's like no response. And okay, eventually when I get a response, it feels incomplete. You just want to say something and get back to what it is they are doing, whatever it is that they are doing. And I just have to struggle to find a way to make it, like I say, fun and interactive before everybody comes back and they're like, okay, I'll get it done today, I'll get it done tomorrow, stuff like that. That is a that in I know we are a bunch of friends working, but in a work environment, that is completely, we would agree that that is probably very unacceptable because if you were all tasks are assigned a timeline, right, deadline. So if you were to like only be committed to something based on like when you feel like doing it, that is really going to affect your productivity output. That is going to affect your productivity metrics when it's time for us to actually observe and put together your work efficiency and your overall outputs in the team or in the company. I know that we are just a group of friends working on a project, but at the end of the day, if you have decided to work on something that you know is of value, you have to at all times put in your very best, as much as you can, put in your very best to actually contribute and make your presence there substantial. The thing is that at the same time, they could probably be going through something on their own that I don't know about. Do you see where the communication issue is coming from now? So I don't always want to have a bias or a pre-notion of this is what they are behaving like or this is how they are behaving like. There is always something behind the scenes. If you're there's a book I read about, or it's a video I read rather, about the danger of one-sided story. I think it was by Chimamanda. So it's a talk that she had about the danger of the one-sided story. There's always, I believe that there are always two sides to everything. Maybe what I'm only just saying is my side, and they have a side where that explains why they have not been so productive. But I can't know their side if they are not willing to communicate about it. So we have to understand that whenever we are working in a team, there's always going to be communication overhead. There's always going to be some communication overhead. It's not something that we can do away with. That is the truth. We can't do completely away with communication overhead. But you have to be able to identify that my inability to communicate is going to cost this team time, resources, and work output that we can't get back if we don't resolve this communication issue. Everything, like I also explained in my last video, almost everything about running a startup is um execution. Execution is your number one priority in running a startup. There are so many people doing the same thing right now. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. There's so many people doing the same thing in this entire tech ecosystem, and with the rapid evolution of AI, you can easily just spin up apps. So people end up doing the same thing, not even knowing they are doing the same thing. So what makes you win over the other person is how fast you can execute. But if you and your team are having communication bugs that you don't even are aware of that you're having, you're not going to not just going to be able to not build, but you're never going to be able to ship, and you're never going to be able to get your products out there. So at the end of it, at the beginning layer of it, you need to be able to identify these communication bugs before you start talking about execution. So that is how much it will cost you. If you're discussing a project feature or a timeline or a personal boundary issue, but you're actually speaking two completely different languages, it's like, this is what I think is the problem, but this is what you think is the problem. And the problem might just be that you are not seeing it from my side of my point of view. It's not even that maybe you're wrong, or that I'm wrong. I know that I am wrong. So sometimes it's like, I know that I'm wrong, but I just want you to see it from my point of view. That is what I'm asking. That is a lot of times, that's actually what people need, just you to be able to see it from their point of view. And when you are not able to do that, the cost is going to be there, the loss in output is going to be there, the loss in execution is going to be there, the loss in resources is going to be there. So it's all just that. And yeah, I feel like that is the cost of execution. Poor communication leads to poor execution, whether we like it or not. So the next thing here is recursive thinking. Let's actually talk about what recursive thinking is. So what is recursive thinking? So recursive thinking in a technical aspect is a recursive function is a function that calls itself to solve smaller blocks of a problem until it reaches a defined exit condition. In the human adaptation of recursive thinking or recursive functions now, it is the ability to take a step back to identify, what are we currently thinking about. Is the practice of stepping outside the immediate conversation to analyze the conversation itself. It's like you and a friend were casually talking about something that you saw on social media, or you saw is happening somewhere in the world, and you give your take on it and he gives his take on it, and you guys don't see eye to eye. Just happen to not see eye to eye at a particular time. But then you are genuinely confident that what you're saying is correct, so you push on it, and the person is also confident that what they're saying is, you push on it. And you observe that sometimes like this, and it's not just even casual talks like this, sometimes it's like decisions that actually matter in the workplace, in the family. So you want to ensure that the wrong decision is not taken, so you want to push your own point. So so you have to be able to, and it ends up wanting to lead to a confusion. So the truth is that, what do you value most? Do you value being right, or do you value a an environment where everybody hears themselves and tries to understand themselves and come to a warming decision? So it's like, if you just value being the right one at all times, then yeah, you probably go ahead and continue arguing, because that is what is most important to you. But if you realize that what is more important is us being in a community and being together, and let it just being peace and understanding, so to be able to support growth, you realize that you actually have to employ recursive thinking. And what is that? That is the ability to take a step back to understand, where is this leading to. Okay, it's not just to argue, it's not just to push your point. Will me pushing my point eventually lead us to an understanding? So you have to be able to employ recursive thinking in ways such as stepping outside the immediate conversation to analyze the conversation itself, and thinking about the way you are thinking, instead of just saying, instead of just repeating what it is that you want the person to hear. You take a step back and you ask questions like, why are we arguing right now? Okay, what is the underlying variable causing this loop? And most times it's just we don't see eye to eye. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye. Some other times you don't genuinely believe in my point of view. So you have to, in whatever case it is, you have to first of all understand the trigger of this loop. And when you do, maybe it's that the person genuinely does not believe that what you're saying is true, or the decision that you're presenting is the right way to go. You break it down for them to better understand why you think that it's the right way to go. And the truth is that if you are truly humble and honest about your own point of view, if the person does not still agree, you can ask somewhere else, get a third party's opinion. And there is genuinely no way that everybody can be right and everybody would be wrong. Maybe there can be a middle ground, but eventually, if you people are presenting two completely different points, one person has to be right, one person has to be wrong. That is the thing. But there could still be a middle ground. That is the thing. There could also always be a middle ground. So you have to, first of all, in the case that there's no one is agreeing, get a third party opinion. And what I was going to say, if you are truly humble and unbiased about your own point of view, eventually the person should be able to see the wisdom or the sense in what you're saying, or you begin to realize that what you're saying is actually the one that is wrong, and you should be humble enough to be able to make adjustments and be like, oh, I see now that I'm the one that was having the wrong idea about this thing and should make changes to it. So it shifts you from being an emotional participant trapped inside a broken function to being the system architect observing the loop from above. That is what recursive thinking enables you to do. And that is for what recursive thinking is. Now, developing the system and the practical steps to practicing it. To train your mind to recursively think during moments of tension, you need to implement three distinct steps. Number one, pause the execution loop. You can't just keep on executing. Whenever you realize that you have a problem, you feel like you can brute force your way out of the problem by just keep on reiterating. No. As a software engineer and as a founder, there are times when you realize that you might run into issues with this thing, and you have to iterate fast. So you don't want to wait until you have solved every single problem before you execute. But there are times when you cannot push too hard on execution without solving a problem. If not, you risk falling into consequences that will be difficult for you to escape or to go out from. So it's like, instead of managing your finances now, you feel like you can push with the current runway you have, and push, and you believe that eventually, as you keep on pushing, you run into profit. You ship one really great feature, and and users will just buy it, and you just boom, you just hit a very high gross margin. But it doesn't work that way. If you don't take a step back to really analyze, okay, if I spend this amount, we did this time frame, and we did this level of execution, am I expect that will I really get this amount of results or this amount of income back from this investment I am currently making? That is a method of recursive thinking, taking a step back to really think about where you are right now in that communication loop or in that execution loop before actually taking a step ahead to execute or to communicate. That is the pause in the execution loop. The second one, identify the current loop state. Okay, so you're having a conversation with your co-founder, and it seems like you're currently running into a discourse, a disagreement, and you notice that something has happened before, And you notice this that happened for because you took the step one, you paused the execution loop, you decided to take a step back, and you realize that this has happened before. I have been here before. So where is this place and how did I get here? Is the step two. Identify the current loop state. Where am I right now? And that means when you go back to take a step to like observe everything, you in your head you simulate what took you to this point that you are and how it happened the last time, what followed after this point. So when you identify that, you are able to foresee what comes next. That is the eventual consequence of your communication bug or your communication um, bug. Yeah. So when you identify this, you are then you now have the mental space to be able to make a different decision. So now step three, define the base case, the exit condition. So a recursive function without a base case causes a stack overflow, sometimes a buffer overflow. In a disagreement, your base case must be objective alignment, mutual respect, or a constructive next step. That's what I'm saying. You just can't keep on wanting to prove that your point was right. No, it's not that simple. There has to be an objective alignment. It has to be practical. Okay, this is the next step because it leads to so amount of revenue with a calculated and or estimated those amount of loss that we can manage, and not this because this the reason not this because this amount of income would also result in this amount of loss which we cannot manage, and that is why option A is better than option 2 or option B. Mutual respect, you have to ensure mutual respect because communication does not work without mutual respect. Or a constructive next step, just like the analogy I just gave. If your exit condition is winning the argument, your system is built to fail, and that is for developing the system. Practical steps to practice it. Number four, developing sorry debugging before production, resolving bugs before execution. How do you do this? How do you apply these practical steps to ensure your team or relationship, personal relationships, remain aligned before you ship your energy into execution? Number one, dry run your conversations. Just like testing code locally before pushing it to a live production server, practice active reflection before delivering high stake feedback. Don't just speak it as it is in your mind. If you always do that, you are bound to end up triggering people and leaving them with the wrong impression of than what you actually wanted to say. Take a step back to think about how your feedback is going to affect the outcome or the output that this person is going to give, or how it's going to affect them internally. If it's going to arouse senses of maybe this despite or just disappointment, they are not going to be motivated to even want to do something better because they don't see the it's all just ends up being a negative feeling. So there has to be a level certain level of contribution to the amount of work that they are doing to the current state at which they are delivering. So it should be something more like anticipating how your inputs will be passed based on the other person's emotional current state. Don't just speak because that is what is in your mind. No, understand how the person is currently feeling and what the person needs to know or needs to get from you to be able to deliver a better result in the next quarter or whatever it is, the next assignment that they'll probably be given. The next one, initiate meta communication. What does this mean? If you notice a conversation is going in circles, explicitly call out a time out to examine the loop. Use phrases like, hey, I notice we keep looping back to this specific point. Let's pause and figure out why this part feels like a blocker for both of us. Find the common ground between you and this party when it seems like you are constantly rotating over one specific deliverable or point or whatever it is. This invites the other person to look at the architecture of the conversation with you. So I'll bring this back. you need to be honest about your point of view and unbiased as unbiased as you can be, because sometimes we might be the ones that is right, that are wrong, not the other person. So when you do identify that, okay, this is generally what is the problem, okay, um this is what I understand is the problem, and I do uh, think that it might be difficult for us to implement it, but I feel like it is worth trying and would really solve this problem for both of us. Just be very, very unbiased and humble about that step that you need to take to be able to solve that problem. And the last one, refactor your input. If the output of your communication is consistently an error, that is, you are you the nature of your conversation is defensive, with it speaks withdrawal or anger, stop passing the same input. Change your tone, alter your assumptions, and approach the problem with an unbiased kindness and introspection. You can't work with people when you have unresolved feelings within you. They are eventually going to come out and reflect on the way you interact with other people, even if you do not mean to, upset or offend them or treat them negatively, because those feelings are repressed within you. They have a way to just push out and reflect in your tone, your interactions, your method of speaking, and everything, and you just end up pushing out bad vibes in the entire, space or whatever it is, or your relationship per se, and that doesn't really lead to an improvement of, you know the conversation, or improve the communication flow within you and and the other party. So these are very, very important things to practice and to try out when interacting with your co-founders, your teammates, your friends, perhaps your colleagues, or your fellow students, or whatever it is, wherever places that you're contributing your time and your energy, and maybe it's a project or stuff like that. You need to be able to identify where these bugs are, the cost of these bugs in your venture, your project or your product, and be able to be unbiased in your steps to solving them and making sure that communication flows easier. So I think the key takeaways here is true intelligence, whether mechanical or human, relies on robust feedback loops. By practicing recursive thinking, you stop the reacting of symptoms and start reflecting the core logic of your interactions. Call to action: if you want to build sustainable businesses, strong personal partnerships, and high performance teams, you have to prioritize communication architecture. It is so, so, so important. It is not optional. And yeah, that is all I have for you today. If this made sense to you, or you felt like it hit a spot in your thinking and you'd really like to hear more about stuff like this, please hit the like and subscribe button. And yeah, I'll see you again in the next video. Bye.